Have you ever read a critic's review of a movie before you went to see the movie? Now, I have done that. And I think what often happens when we read a critic's review of a movie before we go to the movie, we have the critic's review like stuck in our head. We're like going to watch the movie based off of that review. And I'm going to stop real quick because I meant to do this too. But Mr. and Mrs. Casey and Julia Goodspeed are in the house. So they got married yesterday. So, yay. All right, now I'll stop. I think I will. So, okay, so that gets stuck in your head. That got stuck in my head. That's why I thought about it. The critic gets stuck, the thought of the critic gets stuck in your head. And so Matt, I went and saw Solo. So, fellow Star Wars fan, I went and saw Solo, but I had read the critic's review of the young Han Solo movie before I went. And it wasn't a good review. And so I was going in with low expectations of the movie Solo. And I came out surprised. I was like, wow, that was a good movie. It so happened, so I was actually hoping then that there would be like the trilogy or something. We'd get a lot of these young Solo movies, but we didn't. And one reason why we didn't is because of the money that the movie made was one of the lowest ever for a Star Wars movie. And many believe it's because of the critics of the movie. That the critics set the tone for the movie, and so it got this bad review, and then less people showed up to see it. Here's one thing that I know about movie critics. They actually never tell the movie maker their opinions. A critic never goes to the movie maker and say, this is what I think about your movie. They tell everybody else. Can I tell you that's true about any critic? Usually, critics don't go to the people that they're speaking against. They go to other people and tell other people what they think about those people that they're against. That's what critics typically do. Critics they have a lot to say, but they typically don't have the guts or the nerve to say it to those they are critical of. So, with Numbers 11 showing us people complaining, Numbers 12 shows us people criticizing. I hope you're excited to be here today to talk about criticism. But it's only two people that are being critical, and that's not the only time that criticism happens in this journey for Moses. But these two people are critical, and these two people are actually notable people to Moses. We'll see who they are in just a second, but I do want to just give you a definition of what it means to criticize. So to criticize, it means to express your disapproval of someone or something. So you basically don't approve of this person, or you don't approve of what is going on. Last week I said that we can ask questions about things in church or life for that matter, and we can come to seek understanding about vision and direction from leadership. And that's not the same as complaining, and that's not the same as criticism. Questions and seeking to understand should be welcomed in our lives. Amen? But complaining and criticism, I don't think they should be. And there's a difference between criticizing someone and coaching them. There's a difference between criticizing someone and mentoring them. A critic just points out what they don't like, but mentors and coach point out what they see needs to improve. So there's a difference between a critic and a coach, critic and a mentor. You want coaches, you want mentors in your life. But realize they're trying to help you through something. A critic's not trying to help you through anything. Never. A critic never is trying to help. That's a big difference. So now to be clear about criticism, there's one big truth. Here's the big truth about criticism. Criticism usually is not expressed to the person it's against. It is expressed about the person it's against. Notice this. This is significant to understand about criticism. It's usually not expressed to the person it's against. It's expressed about the person it's against. And so, here we go. Here's the first criticism we see, Numbers 12:1. It says, while they were in Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron criticized Moses because he had married a Cushite woman. Now, just to make sure everyone, either online or in person, is aware, Miriam and Aaron are Moses' older brother and sister. All right, so they're his brother and sister, and they are in this moment criticizing Moses for having married a Cushite woman. What's the big deal for that? Why? Why are they criticizing him for marrying a Cushite woman? Well, you got to ask what's a Cushite, all right? And so you actually, if you just go to the Hebrew, the interlinear interpretation of the Hebrew verse here, you learn that Cushite is Ethiopian. All right? So they're criticizing Moses for having an Ethiopian wife. He's Jewish. He's from the Middle East. She's from Africa. So what we honestly have here is a cultural issue. They don't like that he didn't marry a Jewish woman. That he has an interracial marriage. So that's part of it. It's not the full picture. I don't believe it's a full picture, but it's a significant enough picture just to notice here that there is an issue here because he didn't marry his own race. There is a racial issue playing a part in this moment. And sometimes we just want to bypass that. We can't bypass that. It's here. And the reason why it's important to kind of see this is because what this tells you is that this issue of Jews and Gentiles wasn't just a Jesus problem in Jesus' day. It wasn't just a Paul problem in Paul's day. It was a problem. The Jewish-Gentile problem was there all the time. So this idea of interracial issues or just racial issues, that was there all the time. And we just got to be aware of that. It's there all the time. And so they were criticizing that he was married to a Cushite woman. I actually don't think that's the only criticism here about his wife. I think the other side to this criticism about his wife is that she was strong and independent. And you're like, Pastor David, how did you get that out of that verse? Well, I didn't get it out of that verse. What we know is that Jethro is Moses' father-in-law. Jethro had no sons. He had, 7 daughters, which that means Steve, you and I combined, we don't get to what Jethro had. Combined, we have 5, and he had 7. So, and Moses married the oldest daughter. So the daughters had to do what any sons would have had to do, which is, in this case, take care of the sheep and the herds and all of that. They had to do all of that work. That takes some strong leadership to lead that. I really believe Moses' wife was strong and independent because she had to shepherd the flocks that would have been a son's responsibility, but her and her sisters took care of it. That takes some strong leadership. Some independence to do that. I think also the fact that she had to raise her kids while Moses is off freeing the Israelites in Egypt, she was single mom in it for a good length of time there. It takes a strong, independent woman, in my opinion, to be a good single parent, to be a good single mom. So you can see some of this difficulty. You see this? So I think the issue here, the criticism isn't just, hey, she's of a different race. She's strong and independent, and we don't like that. That means she probably gave her opinion not just to Moses, but to Miriam and Aaron. And if you're new to New Life, I live with 3 strong, independent women. Hershey's not so strong and independent, but she has her moments. That's our dog, if you didn't know that. But my girls, Bailey and Savannah, are strong and they're independent, and don't mess with them. And don't mess with them just because Dad said don't mess with them. Just trust me. Don't mess with them. All right, they're strong and independent, and I love that independence that they have. And I got to tell you right now, the independence that comes because their mom is strong and independent. I love having strong, independent women around me. I think they're some of the most amazing people on the face of the earth. Because it takes guts to be a strong, independent woman. Because some people just don't like it. And people criticize that. Just saying. Just saying. Shammy is my rock star and my partner in ministry. And I am grateful for having her on my team, but being with me now for all these years. 25 years we've been married in May, 29 years in December we'll have been dating, and I'm telling you, when I looked at this and I saw what they were criticizing, I knew they were criticizing more than just this racial issue. We've been doing ministry now for 22 years, almost 23. We're on 20, and I've seen her criticized, primarily because she's strong and she's independent. And that is something that's just not right. And so I'll keep going. So we see this. One thing that we see. So let me say this. One thing I've seen in being strong and independent as a woman, it will bring criticism your way, whether you like it or not, and whether you deserve it or not. So this is why I think the criticism wasn't just of her race, but her personality and character too. But that's not where they end. Okay, we could deal with that, right? Okay, you got a problem with my wife. Okay, right? We get that. That happens. Right? That just happens. Some people have problem with people, but they don't stop there. They have another criticism. Can I show you the other criticism? Here it is. The other criticism is this part of verse 2. They said, "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Hasn't he spoken through us too?" They criticized Moses' leadership. They criticized his leadership. One important note is here, if you looked at the Hebrew, again, just a real quick interlinear study of this Hebrew, what you learn is it actually tells us they're only talking to each other. This is criticism to its core. Two people talking about somebody else without talking to the somebody else. Hasn't God talked to me? Yeah, God talked to you. Yeah. Well, let's not get into the calf, the golden calf issue here, though. But yeah, God spoke through me because I did this. And we talked about this, right? How Aaron could feel like, look at me, God did this through me. Oh, well, Moses wouldn't even be in Egypt. He'd be dead if Miriam, didn't follow the little raft or whatever thing, to get to Pharaoh's daughter. Without me going to get mom to nurse him, he wouldn't be around. Do you see how easy for these two to have these, well, we're important too. No one's saying they're not important. They just think that God got it wrong. And so remember, criticism usually is not expressed to the person it's against. It's expressed about the person it's against. So what do we do? What do we do when we hear criticism? All right, someone comes up to you and starts criticizing somebody that you know, or criticizing someone you know of. They begin to do it. What do we do with it? This is what we do with it. We don't listen to it. No, next one. We don't listen to it. We respond to it. All right? Don't listen to criticism. Respond to criticism. What I mean is when criticism begins to be spoken around you, stop them and ask them, have you said that to the person you're talking about? And if they say no, then you tell them you don't want to hear anymore. I'm serious. You want to end criticism in your life. People bringing criticism to you, as soon as you hear it, stop them and ask them, has the person you're saying that about heard this? Have you told them this? And if they say no, tell them you need to go say it. You need to go tell them. It will stop people coming to you and criticizing about others to you. It may not stop their criticism, but it'll stop you hearing it. And you need to stop hearing criticism just as much as you need to stop speaking criticism. And so if you hear it, just stop it. And you respond by saying, go to the person that you're criticizing. And then you can actually bring some reconciliation between the two of them. Because often the one who's getting criticized about has no idea the criticism's happening. They have no way of so if they are at fault, which guess what? When you get criticized, it's not 100% they're wrong, and you being criticized are 100% right. There are times when you're criticized and you are wrong, they are right in their opinion of you or your situation. And what you need to learn how to do is you got to learn how to actually stop people so they'll go to them, and then when they go to them, then that you can even work on the issues that they do bring up that are necessary in your life. And the relationship can actually stay strong in that. I really do believe if we first chose to seek to understand that which we want to criticize, we would be less critical of each other, more understanding of one another. So I'm not saying that we have to agree with each other all the time. We can actually be in disagreement and not become critics of each other. That's so true. So the reality is that we all get criticized, and I use this verse during this series already. James chapter 3, verse 1 says this, "Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. We'll find criticism, those of us that are put in leadership." So when it comes to being critical of leaders, you need to know this important truth. It's not just a truth about leaders, but it is true about leaders. The person you criticize may not hear it, but God does. Okay, so what I'm saying is that this is not just for leadership. This is leadership in the context that we're in Numbers 12, and the context of what we're talking about. But in any situation, the person, no, put it back for me. The person you criticize, whoever it is, may not hear it, but God does. And so in this moment, it is a leader. The person is a leader, but maybe it's your husband. Maybe it's your wife. Maybe it's your mom or dad. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe it's your coworker. Maybe it's your neighbor. It doesn't matter. We can put anyone in here. You got to know this. When you criticize, the person may not hear it, but God does. You got to know that God hears your criticism of others. It's not a silent thing. And so then, that's where verse 12 simply says, "But the Lord heard them." The Lord heard them criticize. And just as I asked, what does God think about people who complain? Do you want to know what God thinks about people who criticize? Do you want to know? I'm going to tell you anyways if you want to know or not, but here it goes. Now, obviously, we're not going to go in depth into a big search into the scriptures, but we'll go into this moment specifically, and I'm going to read a few verses to you. Verses 4 through 8, let me read what happens. So the criticism takes place. They criticize Moses about his wife. They criticize Moses about his leadership. They think they can do better than God, and this is what happens. So immediately, the Lord called to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, and said, "Go out to the tabernacle, all three of you." So the three of them went to the tabernacle. Then the Lord descended in the pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle. Aaron and Miriam, exclamation point. The Bible doesn't use exclamation points like we do when we text. And so just so you know, when you get an exclamation point in the Bible, it's a big deal. Not necessarily in a text or message maybe, but definitely here. So God's like making a point here. He's already used it a couple times. He called and they stepped forward, and the Lord said to them, "Now listen to what I say. If there were prophets among you, I, the Lord, would reveal myself in visions. I would speak to them in dreams, but not with my servant Moses. Of all my house, he is the one I trust. I speak to him face to face, clearly, and not in riddles. He sees the Lord as he is. So why were you not afraid to criticize my servant Moses?" Yeah, that's got to be a mic drop, right? When we criticize others, but especially when we criticize leadership, and when I say leadership, I'm not saying pastors. When you criticize leadership, it's critical, we're dealing about criticism. When you criticize leadership, you're telling God, "I think I can do better than you." When you criticize the president of the United States, the governor of the state of Indiana, your mayor of your city council, your school council, when you criticize them, you are telling God, "I can do better than you." Because go back to Daniel, and Daniel reveals to us an incredible truth, that God puts those into leadership whomever he chooses. And so, you may not like who's in leadership, but God allowed that leadership to be put in place, and he does not want you to criticize the leadership he put in place. You can do a lot of things. You can stand up against something like the people of God did. When you go back to Esther, when the king made a decree that they were to be killed, he then made another decree they could defend themselves, and they rose up and defended themselves. There's not like you just sit back and go, "Oh, okay, I'll just let leadership do what leadership does." No, that's why you come to leadership and ask questions. That's why, you know what, when your political leaders say to you, email me, text me, come visit me, whatever, they actually mean it. They really do. That your voice to a political leader actually makes a difference. When you sit back and go, "That political leader is just a bunch of malarkey," or whatever, you just criticize them over and over, all you're doing is saying, "God, you got it wrong." instead of you actually step up and have some activity in the political process, then you are doing what God would want you to do. But it's not just political. When you sit back at your job and you criticize your manager for the way he leads, but you don't go up to him or her and you say, you know what, I got an idea on how you could do this. Is just an idea on how we could do something different with our job. And they, if they're a good leader, would be like, oh man, thanks. I'll look into that. Or yeah, that's a great idea. Instead of just sitting back here going, seriously? You want to have a strong marriage? Stop criticizing and having conversations instead. My husband this, my wife this. Go talk to them. See, this is what we need to understand. This is so important. But the other thing that you need to see, that is so important here is that we need to realize that Moses did not know they had criticized him. Remember I told you, Miriam and Aaron were together alone criticizing. And the only other person that heard them criticizing was God. What did God do? Hey, Miriam, Aaron, and Moses, come to the tabernacle. And then while they're at the tabernacle, Miriam and Aaron step forward. Moses is kind of like, what is going on? And he hears God say what God said, the mic drop. They've been criticizing me. Why have they been criticizing me? See, he still doesn't even know what they criticized, right? We just know that it happened. He doesn't know the criticism is about his wife. He doesn't know the criticism is about his leadership. He's learning there's criticism happen right now. What would you do if you heard about criticism? What do you do when you hear about criticism? How do you respond to criticism? How do you respond to the criticism that you receive? Because Moses had a choice. Look, I'm going to show you then what happens here. Numbers 12, 9 through 13. I got to again read real quick and finish this up for us. The Lord was very angry with them, and he departed. As the cloud moved from above the tabernacle, he's leaving, there stood Miriam, her skin as white as snow from leprosy. When Aaron saw what had happened to her, he cried out to Moses, "Oh, my master, please don't punish us for this sin." What sin? It's criticism of sin in this moment. Is it possible that all criticism is sin? We know in this moment it is. We know in this moment it is. This sin we have foolishly committed. Don't let her be like a stillborn baby already decayed at birth. I want you to notice then, look at what Moses knows they criticized. He doesn't know what they said. He just knows that they did it. He finds out that it happens. Miriam now has leprosy. She has a death wish upon her body now. And Aaron's like, please, will you not punish us? And Moses cries out to the Lord, "Oh God, I beg you, please heal her." Wow. Moses shows incredible love to his sister in this moment. And this is, if there's a point that I want to, for those of you who receive criticism, I want you to hear this thought right here, that it is critical that we love others, even those who are critical of us. If we just left right now, that's the point. There's a point I can give to all of us, because I'm not saying you're critical or I'm critical. I don't really care in this moment who's more critical than who in this room. What I am caring about is that it's critical that we love even those who are critical of us. Moses was just drenching her with love by saying to God, "I beg you, please heal her." I'm going through a study of 1 Peter, and the first 4 chapters all clearly are telling us to love one another. And chapter 4 tells us to have a deep love for one another. We need to be like this. When we hear criticism within the body of Christ, we need to have a deep love for those who have criticized us. We need to be loving on them so much. So I want us to finish this story, and I want you to see what God does to Miriam even after Moses cries out. He's cried out, verse 14 and 15, it says, "But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had done nothing more than spit in her face, wouldn't she be defiled for 7 days? So keep her outside the camp for 7 days. And after that, she may be accepted back." What we're seeing is that God's saying, yes, I'm going to heal her, but she needs to be away for 7 days. She needs to be away from everybody. Why? So Miriam, verse 15, so Miriam was kept outside the camp for 7 days, and the people waited until she was brought back before they traveled again. The next place they go is the Promised Land, by the way. But they get to the border of the Promised Land right after this. She had to remain for 7 days away, because God does not look kindly on those who criticize. And here's what I tell you. There are some people in your life who are incredible critics. They can criticize. They can be a movie critic easily. All right? They criticize with the best of them. They are so critical about everything and everyone. They criticize about everything and everyone. And what this shows me is that you need to keep them at a distance. Those who are critics, those who are critical, need to be kept at a distance until they transform, until they change. You don't need critics in your life. They need to be at a distance. Now, I think the key thing here is to, once they've been transformed, you invite them back in. You invite them back into your life, but you got to be aware of whether or not they've truly changed. You got to believe that transformation happened, and let time tell the story. If it truly has, and that they haven't been changed, then you just say thanks but no thanks. Friendship from afar, Facebook friends only, or right? You need to separate from the critics. That's what we learn here. We got to be separate from the critics. We have to separate. But we want to believe for them to be changed. Because if Ananias didn't believe that Saul had been transformed, Saul never would have become Paul, and he would have only been known as someone who once destroyed the church, not someone who built the church. Saul was the critic of the church. And he went from being a critic of the church to being a creator of the church in that known part of the world. Because Ananias was like, okay, God, you told me to pray with them. All right, I'll believe for that transformation. Peter, Barnabas. Barnabas was a huge person to help Paul through that process and that transformation. Paul needed people to believe in him because he had once been a critic. And so there are critics, and maybe you once were a critic. But there are critics in our lives that we do need to extend away from us, pray for them to be transformed, and then welcome them back in, believing they were transformed. And they just may be the Pauls of our day to bring transformation through them instead of criticism from them. This is why it's critical we love even those who are critical of us. I'm closed, but simply says, will you be critical of others, especially your leaders, or will you love others, even your critics? Close your eyes. Let me pray over you today. As I lead us in prayer, I just have these different thoughts that come to my mind. I wrote them down. Maybe it's you here, you're saying, I need God's help loving those who are critical of me. Or I need God's help being less critical of others. Maybe you're here and you'd say, yes, okay, that's the first one's me. I feel like a lot of people are criticizing me, and you need help loving them more. Or maybe you're here and you say, you know what, I'm the critical one. I criticize way too much. And you're saying, God, I want to criticize people less. I want to love them more. Regardless of where you find yourself, who in this room wants to give more love than criticism? Raise your hand. online, put a hand emoji in there or something and just say that's me, so that Pastor Rachel will know to pray with you. Because I'm going to pray for those who've raised their hand and simply said, I want to love more than I criticize. God, I pray that we would be known as followers of Jesus who love, not who criticize. We would be known far more for our love. In fact, Jesus, you said they will know that we are your disciples by our love, not by our criticism. So help us to love one another with a deep love, like Peter said in his book. But help us also to love others who do not know you with a deep love. And help us to definitely love those who are critical of us. And may we bring transformation their way because we choose to love them. And may we stop listening to criticism and respond to it and bring reconciliation to relationships to one who doesn't even know often that they need it. God, I pray that we would be a church that heads to the promised land you have for us, not with complaining, not with critics, but with love permeating from us in a deep, real way. In your name we pray. Amen. I want to say thank you to you guys who raised your hand today, because we prayed for you this morning. And we didn't just pray for you this morning. At the end of our prayer time, we even thanked God for your response. We prayed and we said, thank you, God, for your response before you even responded. And so you were an answer to our prayers this morning that we prayed before service. I want to say thank you for saying yes to, I want to love more than criticize. And I am proud of you for making that decision. I want to give you guys all a challenge here today. As we go, I want to give you a challenge that for the next 7 days, that you ask God each morning to help you be less critical and more loving with those around you more than the day before. So we're just saying this. Here's my level of love. Here's my level of criticism, that this happens. Just a little more each day. Wouldn't that be cool? And maybe just, I'm not saying this is you, but we all know somebody that is critical and loving. And what if in the next 7 days we see this happen to them? Oh, would that not be good? I pray that over you. I pray that over all of us today. And maybe these questions will help you in that process. What can you do to become less critical and more loving each day? Are there critical people you need to remove from your life? How does knowing being critical of leaders is being critical of God change the way you view criticism? Just some questions we hope that you would take and make those conversations happen this week with someone. And we'll jump into a deeper dive about all of this this week too. Can I give you some real practical help that might help you on criticism? Besides I hope I gave practical help. But I wrote this book down, Front Row Leadership. Front Row Leadership by Rob Ketterling is a book that is all about those who criticize learning how to come to the front and help lead instead of being in the back and criticizing what's going on. And so I just want to encourage you, if you want that book, I'll buy it for you. You can just come see me and I'll get it to you. But that's a great book. I would encourage you. If you haven't read The Speed of Unity, we have a few copies still left. We give those out to everyone. That would be a great book to help you in this process too. Right now, I just want to let you know that today is the 4th Sunday of the month. That means that I'm going to have a couple of dozen donuts over at the Cafe Roma tables. Love to see you. If you just want a donut, you can come by and grab one. Hopefully talk to me for just a little bit. I'd love to connect with you, even if you're new or we haven't talked for a little while. I'll be over there in just a second. There is Momentum tonight. Grant will be leading Momentum tonight, so you guys will get to see. So some of you guys are excited about that. There's also the prayer walk and prayer worship gathering tonight. Prayer walk begins at 4 o'clock, and the worship gathering's at 6:30 down where First Fridays takes place downtown. There'll be food trucks and some other stuff going on there too if you want to grab a bite to eat. Any questions on that, you can see me, and I'll help you on that, all right? Thank you for coming to New Life. Next week's our last week in our Moses Destination Promised Land, and then we kick off our season of becoming. Can't wait to share all those details with you guys on September 5th as we launch into that study together and that journey together. God bless you as you go. Thanks for coming to New Life today. We'll see you later. See you online. Take care.